Hello, everybody out there, and welcome back to Elevate with Anthony and Steve. We're the podcast that gives you the tools and gives you the information that you need to take your leadership skills to the next level. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I think that anybody out there can really benefit from. It's going to be about results. We started this off talking about who the book could help. We talked about self-improvement last week, and today we're talking about the big R word. To help me with all this is my tag team partner, Steve Mattioli. And do I mention?
Good morning.
Good morning. I forgot to mention best-selling author Steve Mattioli. Good to see you again, Steve.
Now you're just flattering me. Now you're gonna make me blush now.
Okay, well, we're gonna try to make you blush the whole podcast if we can, Steve. You know what? This is such a great topic because there's so much information out there about CEOs and some of the troubles they've had, and CEOs that have had the golden parachute handed to them, and it all does come down to one word, and that's results. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And Steve, I hope that you can help our listeners get a better idea of what that means and how you measure those results.
Absolutely, Anth. We're going to have some good stuff here today. Simple things, but really, really important things. And this comes down to the essence of what a leader has to do, and that is produce results. Whatever those results may be, whatever success looks like. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But, we were talking about a couple days ago, we were talking about what's going on at Boeing. And I think we wanted to cover this real quick. Everybody has heard about the plane where the door came off.
Hey, Steve.
Not a good thing at 30,000 feet to have happen. Right,
Steve. Not a good gauge, right, for how.
Yeah,
you're
not
doing.
A good look.
Not a good look, right?
Yeah, and I was looking up the Boeing CEOs, and he's only been in there a couple years. I think he took over in 2020. We had another Boeing CEO that was let go after a few years, and those were more serious. Where we had the two Boeing crashes. 2018, 2017, where they put in a new control system on the 737 MAX. It wasn't ready for prime time, and it caused two pilots to lose control of the plane, and a lot of people died. So Boeing was just recovering from that, and then they get hit with this. And we talked about, one of the things about producing results is the quality of what you're producing. And this CEO now is going to be resigning at the end of the year, probably being forced out because he did not do enough to get the quality that the company was looking for. So that's why this thing is so relevant to getting results, because if you remember a guy by the name of Dick Vitale, Anthony, you remember Dick Vitale?
I do
used to
remember
call college basketball games.
Yes,
Very funny announcer. He was just so good to listen to. And Dick always said, you're either going to get results or you're going to be sitting on the pine. You're going to be warming the bench. And that's what we're talking about here today. You don't want to be sitting on the pine. Results are important. And just like the Boeing situation, unfortunately, when you don't get them, bad things are going to happen to you. Bad things are going to happen to your career.
Well,
and so that's what we want to cover today.
It's one of those situations where it's Houston, we have a problem. And
Exactly.
What's devastating about it is these were people's lives. And so being a good leader, there comes a lot of responsibility. And when things are going great, you get all the praise. But the other side of it is when things don't go so great, you need to be accountable. You need to take action and do the best you can to remedy the problem. And some of the things we're going to talk about today can help leaders, young leaders, aspiring leaders. Even when you talk about personal relationships, your spouse, your kids, if you're a coach leading a team, it's all about results and being accountable. And we're going to talk about some things that hopefully maybe give you one idea where you can take your leadership skills to the next level. And with that being said, I have a question for you, Steve. Why are results important? And talk about a little bit how they're measured.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're important because that's what a leader is there to do, is get results. Now, when we say get results, it means different things to different situations, right? You just mentioned a coach. And I mentioned a college coach in my book. Uh, and she can do a lot of things. She has to recruit. She has to, be part of the community. She has to train her players. She has to maybe uh, uh, teach at the school, whatever, right? A coach has to do many different jobs. But one thing a coach better do, what is the success of the coach, Anth? What's the bottom line success of a coach?
Win, baby, win.
That's right, the W column. That's right.
Mm.
So all those other things are good. All those other things are necessary. They help build the W column. But if you're not winning games, you're gonna find yourself looking for work. And so, when people get in a leadership position, they need to understand that there is a lot of weight on producing results. And results, we can be talking about quantity, production type stuff. I had production goals every month in my job for many, many years. We can be talking about quality, as we just talked with Boeing. Is the product you're producing quality? Is it safe? That's a leader's responsibility. And we can be talking timeliness of the product. And these are all things that a leader has to produce. And it becomes very important. And I'll tell you, one of the things I saw, Anth, in my job, and I saw in a lot of young leaders, when you're working for yourself, you're only responsible for you, right?
Good point.
But when you become in a leadership position, suddenly you're responsible for the results of everybody under you. So
Steve,
now you take on a different role.
it's one of those
Go ahead.
situations where be careful what you wish for, right? Being a
Exactly.
leader now, you have other people that you're responsible for, and you're the fall guy when things go bad, and if things are going great, no, that's the way they're supposed to go. So I like that, and you did refer to that in your book, and there's a whole chapter about that. And I would, if you do get the book, there's some great information in there about that.
Yeah. And take an example of let's say a car salesman. Let's say you were a really good car salesman, and now they've promoted you to the manager, the car sales manager, right? So now your job is switched from directly selling cars to making sure everybody else sells cars, right?
Yeah.
And now you have to switch the mentality of I'm not producing, I'm not on the front, I'm not on the manufacturing line now anymore, but now I'm over those people that are on the line producing those results. And how do I do my job now to make sure I get the most out of them, get the results I need, and all that good stuff. And that's what results is all about. Is a lot of times as a leader, it's not just you producing your stuff, it's you working through people to produce good stuff. And that's the challenge right there. You have to work through people now to get the results, to get the success, to get the production. And that's where it differs from when you're just an individual working
It's
for yourself.
it's the human
It's a lot.
factor. It's the human factor, right? That's the
Absolutely.
It really is. It's connecting with these people and empowering them. And you can't do it all yourself, can you, Steve? You have to have people that are empowered. You have to teach them so they can go out and eventually become leaders themselves. It's not easy.
Yes.
It's not easy at all.
No, and you want them to go out and get results, and then you have to measure those results and make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And maybe if we get some time, we'll talk about how do you do that? Because I get asked that a lot. Is how do I how do I get people to do their job better? How do I?
Let's go into that
How,
right now, if you can, Steve, because that's one thing we want to kind of gauge today is gauges and monitoring results, and I think that's important.
yeah. So the first thing you have to set goals as a leader. What do you want to accomplish? When I walked into my job, every year I looked at where I was at. What do I want to accomplish this year?
Hmm.
What are the goals that people are that those above me are expecting from me? What other good things do I want to do? You have to have some type of plan, right? if you're going to get results. Because sometimes in the planning process, you might need more resources, you might need more tools, whatever. So you have to start with a plan of what you want to accomplish. And then from there, you have to start implementing the plan and measuring results as you're going along. And measuring is just as important as setting the goals. And this is another thing that I cover in my book, and this is really important, Anth. You better be looking at numbers if you're a leader, because I guarantee you somebody above you is looking at the numbers.
It's all
I
about the
know.
numbers, Steve. Someone's
Yeah,
always looking at you.
how many times have I heard in my career from senior management, it's not about the numbers, it's about the numbers.
It's about the numbers.
I'm sorry, it's about the numbers.
It's all about the numbers, yeah.
It's all about the numbers, and you better be looking at those numbers, because those numbers are going to tell you whether you're on track or whether you're not on track. I talk about gauges in the book on how you monitor where you're at. Simple example. You get in your car and you start it up. What's one of the first gauges you look at, Amp?
If you have any gas, right?
I hope
so.
you get this right. This is a really easy question.
Do you
What's
have
the
any
first
gas
gauge
in the
you look
car?
at? Do you have any gas?
Now, my kids
That's
didn't.
right.
It took my kids a while to learn that, Steve.
Yeah,
you get
that's
that
right.
call, hey, I think I'm out of gas. Well, you either are or you aren't, right? Did you look at the gauge? So that happens. You got to have gauges.
Right. And that's an important gauge. And believe me, I've that gauge has almost cost me being stranded in the middle of nowhere because I was ignoring the gauge, right? But I talk about setting up gauges, setting up performance gauges, whether that's a spreadsheet, whether that's a database, whatever is set up. You set up a gauge, and then you monitor that gauge to make sure that you're on track, because that gauge is going to tell you a lot of stuff. There's a lot of parts that go into that fuel gauge. How it measures the tank, how it gets it to your dashboard, the electronic. There's a lot of little parts that go with that, believe it or not. But it doesn't matter to you, right? Once it's set up, all you care about is how much fuel do I have? Do I have a half tank, a quarter tank, right? And that's what gauges are all about. You set your plan, and then you start monitoring on how you're doing with that plan by setting up gauges, and you check those gauges regularly. I checked.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, give our listeners a few tools that you would use when you say gauges. What kind of tools, can they use to track those results and stay on top of those results? So if they're not hitting their goal, they know that they're behind and they've got to make some adjustments. Talk about that if you could.
Sure. So it goes back to what your plan is and what you're trying to accomplish, and what do you want to measure. Now, I always suggest when you're going to measure something, put a number, as much as you can, put a number to it. And you can put a number to a lot of things, believe it or not. Put a number. For example, we talked about quality right in the beginning, and we talked about Boeing and the issues they're having, and loose bolts on the doors and all that, right? Well, there should be some type of quality program that inspects things, that goes back over after a plane is made and does random inspections, right? And then you would monitor how many of those random inspections found other issues, right? And then you get a number from that. Is it 1%, 0.5%? And then you monitor that and you set goals to improve that percent.
Okay.
So you can take a number anywhere you're at, and you take that number, that gauge, and you set where that gauge should be, whether it's production. I mean, you were in a sales job, about production, right?
Right.
It's money in, right? How many widgets did you produce this month? But you can also do the same thing with quality, and you can also do the same thing with timeliness. So there's a lot of ways you can set gauges to monitor where you're going and make sure you stay on track. And that's really important, because the last thing you want to have as a leader is to get that call from somebody above you who's looking at the numbers, who's looking at gauges, and says, Anth, your folks are way behind on their numbers this year. What's going on? You don't want that call.
You don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want to be caught off guard like that.
Right. And so you don't have to be, as long as you continually focus on what you're doing and the results you're supposed to be. That's why you're there. What am I supposed to be doing? What results am I supposed to be producing? And keeping an eye on those goals. When I was in my job, Anth, every month I spent a whole day, every 30 days, a whole day going through numbers. No, I had, in my last job, I had over 60 employees going through every number
That's a
every
lot
month,
of
the quality
people.
numbers, the quantity numbers, the timeliness numbers. I mean, we were judged on a lot of different numbers. And every month I did that. And as I saw patterns developing, whether it's with one person or with one office, I began to take action. If I found an office is starting to slow down, give that supervisor a call, talk it out. What's going on? Sometimes people have been on vacation or somebody got hurt, haven't
Mm-hmm.
been able to produce. But the key is that you're always, as a leader, you're always looking at those gauges and looking at those results and make sure that you're getting what you're supposed to
Do
get.
spreadsheets help, Steve? Is that something that our leaders out there could use if they if they use Excel already? Is that a tool that could help people monitor where they're at?
Spreadsheets are a great tool. In
Mhm.
fact, during my career, my ability to use spreadsheets benefited me greatly because spreadsheets will help you slice data better than any other tool, and they'll do it very quickly. In fact, on our website, mattiolisolutions.com, shameless plug, I have two videos on
Spoiler
slicing
alert.
data. Spoiler alert. And in one of the videos, Anth, I show you, I take a public database of over, it was from New York for it covered like 8 years, the top baby names in New York over an 8-year period. And there's 50,000 records in that
How
database.
many?
And I show you how
Whoa.
to, within
Whoa.
10 minutes, I can tell you the number one name over those 8 years. That's the power of a spreadsheet. Uh, but they do so much more. See, a lot of data today is distributed on the internet and in companies too. It's distributed in this format, this CSV format, I believe it is, that spreadsheets can easily open and summarize that data. But the
Okay.
ability to use spreadsheets, especially when you're crunching data, is really imperative. And it really gave me an up. A lot of times, believe it or not, I was able to slice data, my own data, and look at the data better than my supervisors were because they were not as good at using spreadsheets as I was. And I was able to dig even deeper into them
I like
and
that.
come out with
I
some
like that.
really good things
Mm,
that they couldn't see, but I could.
mm.
So it is, you bring up a great point. You really have, if you're going to be looking at data, you're going to be a supervisor. You got to know how to look at data, and you have to learn to see what that data is telling you. And there are ways to do it properly, and there are ways
Mm.
not to do it properly. And again,
Okay. Okay.
it's covered really good on my video. I don't want to go into too depth here, but invest in learning how to do basic spreadsheet analysis.
Steve, another question. You talk in your book about the human factor, and we kind of brought it up today about with leadership, and that you get into some cloudy situations when you're a leader. One of the things that I always wondered about, and maybe some you can provide some insight. What about an employee who's not pulling their weight? How does a leader talk to that employee without being condescending, without making the employee feel that they're not capable of doing the job? How do you convey that message without destroying somebody's confidence? Talk about, I know that's in your book too, but talk a little bit about that because I feel listeners need to know something.
Yeah, and this is one of the skills that really comes into play. Again, we go back to your job as a leader is to get those that work for you to do the best they can, produce the best results. So, over my career, there was a lot of occasions where, because of my gauges, because of my monitoring, you see that people are falling behind. They're either their numbers are falling behind or their work is getting rejected more than others. And so you got to take action to get. And now the first thing I would suggest is this, Anth. Don't automatically jump to hammering them with a hammer and threatening them.
Okay.
Go
Okay.
go and talk to them. Have a corrective action talk, what I call it, and find out what's going on. Joe, call them into your office. Joe, your numbers are down over the last 3 months. You're significantly below normal. What's going on? Listen, hear them out, uh, have a conversation with them. Now, your goal here is, and I've seen this work so many times, and I know it's hard to believe, but your goal here is to get the employee back on track. That's your
I
goal.
like that. I do like
And,
that.
yeah, and if you can get them back on track and get them to produce good work for a good time to come, that is a great success. So let me give you an example. I had an employee, this was a recent one. I had an employee that was his numbers were slowing down, and I talked with the supervisor about it. And he was a good employee. It didn't make a lot of sense. So I'm in the office one day. This was during COVID, and he happened to be in the office. So as I normally do, I walk around the place and I go talk to people. And this is another great thing. We'll have to do a whole show on that. But I see him in the office. I'm like, great, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to talk to him now. I start talking to him, and immediately he starts telling me about a problem he's having with people not responding to him. And the bottom line was he was allowing people, we had to make appointments with folks. We're the government. A lot of folks didn't want that appointment. They tried to put us off, they tried to drag it out. And he was getting bogged down in that. And I counseled him on what our policy was and how to handle these situations. And after that talk, Anth, I started watching his numbers again. And this guy's numbers just took off after that talk. He went he went right back above production every month, stayed there. And I just thought, what a great success that little conversation was, because I did not have a person that was slacking off and not doing his work. I had somebody that was allowing people to string him out a little bit. And once I brought him back, on the road, he ran with it. And that's what I'm talking about is you have to talk to employees and you have to get them back on the road. Now, obviously, there's going to be times where that's not going to work and you got to go to the next step. But the first step is find out what's going on, hear them out. And sometimes it's not what you think that's getting in their way. It's maybe them misinterpreting a policy. And by helping this one individual out, I watched what a success it was. And I didn't have to take any action. I didn't have to do any threatening. I just had to help him work through a problem that he wasn't aware of.
Key word there. You got to the root of the problem. You didn't talk condescending. You didn't regurgitate his numbers. He knew he was struggling, but you took the time to hear him out. And one of the skills you talk about in your book is listening. And it's very, very, that's probably one of the most powerful skills leaders can have. If you're a good listener, people will tell you, they will tell you what the root of the problem is. And once you find that out, then you can lead them or direct them or support them to get back where they need to be. And that's very important.
No doubt. And it works. It really works.
Well,
we need to, we're only doing a 4-part series here on this leadership, but I tell you, there's a lot of stuff in what we just talked at, what you just said about listening and talking. And these are great things that every good leader does.
Yeah, it's really hard to break this down. It's really hard to break your book. Your finest hour is now. Spoiler alert, number 2. It's really hard to break this down in 4 series because there's so much information. But I really enjoyed speaking with you again. It's been great having this time together, and I hope our listeners out there found some value in this and are able to use some of these skills or practice these skills so they can become the best they can be, and they can be a mentor or a leader for people that, are the future leaders of tomorrow and help them reach their goals.
So yes, Anthony, you're exactly right. Be a results-oriented leader. Plan what success looks like, monitor for it, look at quantity, look at quality, look at timeliness, and produce great results. That's what a leader is all about. And so if you're just getting into a leadership position, I encourage you to think about results every day, every month. What am I producing? What good am I doing here? Why are they paying me? And as you do that, you're going to become better and better. And the results that you and your folks produce are going to become better and better. And that's what it's all about.
Very well said. The book is called Your Finest Hour Is Now. It's available on our website, mattiolisolutions.com, or you can buy it at Amazon. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending some time with us today. This has been great. And I want to wish each and you a great leadership career, if that's what your career is. And we're just happy to be part of it. Steve, any final thoughts?
Yes. We have one more in this series, the leadership series. And the next one's going to be a fun one. Anth, you and I talked about this. We're going to talk about the 5 signs that you might be a bad leader.
So if you have 5 signs, you may have to get some therapy, or you need some help. Is that what you're telling our viewers?
Well, I'm just telling them that we're going to go over 5 things that they can look at and look at themselves and say, does this fit me? Now, the great news is you can always improve these areas and you can always change for the better. But I thought it would just be a nice way to cap off the series. Looking at everything that was in my book and my experience, I want to just cover the 5 signs that you might need some improvement. How about that?
Okay.
What do you think about that, Anth? You like that one?
I'm on board. I'm on board, Steve.
Okay, good.
Well, thanks again for joining us. We will see you next time, and I've enjoyed our time together. On behalf of myself, on behalf of Steve, we will see you next time.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here. See you.